Months later, Paul and Steve Watson came to Texas and joined me live on my radio broadcast to discuss the aftermath of the London bombings. We are joined in studio by Steve Watson and Paul Watson. Guys, you've been in the United States now for about 7 days. How have you liked it?
It's been pretty good so far. Obviously, it's all Western culture, so it's pretty similar.
When we were in London, I mean, there were so many facets to it. But what was it like to have the police march up to you and tell you to turn your camera off when you were just on a public street interviewing people?
Well, I mean, the fear-mongering at the time, we were there right after the bombings, 3 weeks after the first bombings, I believe, but then there was the second failed attempt. So the state of panic was still quite high, even though Londoners basically were apathetic to the attack. They just got on with their lives. They weren't really buying the government propaganda on it.
We had case after case where we'd be out on the street doing interviews with people, and we'd be showing the video cameras, and there were people working right there at the Hard Rock Cafe. And I'm like, look at these cameras. They're everywhere. They're in plain view. And the manager comes out and goes, you know, thanks for showing me that. I've never noticed those. What's your name, sir?
Charlie.
I'm Alex. Nice to meet you, Charlie.
How you doing?
Good. What do you think of the new symbol of the United Kingdom is going to switch from the Union Jack to the black surveillance camera?
Well, you know, there's plenty going on in London, so they need the surveillance cameras everywhere.
But, I mean, it's going to be the new national symbol, of course I'm being sarcastic, but really it has become the national symbol. 4+ million surveillance cameras in the great city of London alone.
What to say about it? You know, I don't even see them there.
You don't see them? They don't exist?
No. 4 million in the city. That's the first time I've even noticed they're there, and I've been working here a year.
Out of sight, out of mind, huh?
That's it.
That's kind of Orwellian, though. You seem like a smart guy, but did you know only the smartest people in the inner party know how to engage in doublethink and doublespeak, where you don't even notice the cameras that are there? In fact, if you say they're not there, they're not there. Here, together, let's say they don't exist.
All right, they don't exist.
2 plus 2 equals 5. Hey. Hey, you could get an inner party membership.
All right, I'm into it.
I mean, that was actual doublethink. Steve, Paul, you want to comment on that?
Well, let me read a quote from Orwell from 1984. Doublethink is an unending series of victories over your own memory, reality control. To know and not to know, to be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies, to hold simultaneously two opinions which cancelled out knowing them to be completely contradictory and believing in both of them, to use logic against logic to repudiate morality while laying claim to it. And this is exactly what we saw over and over again in London.
You've got a nest of, 6 or 7 cameras, and people are out there saying they've never noticed them. It's like, it's a survival mechanism to deny reality, but at the end of the day, it's not even a survival mechanism. It's quite dangerous. We were asking the attitudes of taxi drivers about the bombings. They were all quite ambiguous. They kind of believed the government line at that point.
Do you ever wonder who's really behind it?
Well, I've heard there's people who think that other governments are behind it. You know, British governments, American governments, people have said that.
Oh, really? You heard that some people think it's the government?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Really? How popular is that view?
Pretty unpopular, I would have thought.
It is straight out of George Orwell's 1984. This poor woman thinks that if you give up your liberty, you supposedly get freedom.
Yeah, well, we went to Stockwell tube station where they shot the Brazilian man. We basically noticed this woman who was working on the fruit stall. She'd been interviewed on the BBC. I'd seen her on there, so we went over to interview her. We were talking to her, and Alex asked her if she would sacrifice liberty for security. And she came back with, yes, I'll sacrifice liberty for freedom.
I think people should give up their liberty for freedom.
Liberty and freedom are the same thing. We then asked her again to clarify, just in case she made a mistake, and she said the same thing again. She was willing to give up liberty for freedom, which is really, it's direct doublethink, because the two things mean the same thing.
We found the same mindset in Crawford, Texas, outside Bush's ranch, that we witnessed in England. Populations who are willfully ignorant, who revel in being lied to. Well, we're on our way out to Crawford, where President Bush is vacationing for 5 weeks. He spent about a fourth of his time in the administration out here at his Hollywood set. Though he admittedly is afraid of horses and the cows and many other forms of wildlife, and of course he was born in Kennebunkport, Maine, and spent most of his life there, he likes to put on a cowboy hat and a big belt buckle and strut around. He meets with all these different world leaders and decides to, basically how to carve up the world. He meets with the Saudi leaders and holds hands with them. He meets with Ariel Sharon. He meets with leaders from all over the world, but he certainly doesn't meet with the mothers of dead soldiers.
They don't have any skin in the game, so it's easy for them to say, let's keep our troops over there, let's complete the mission, even though we don't even know what the mission is.
That's really a theme, that we got to get them before they get us. Do you think Iraq attacked us on 9/11?
Maybe not Iraq itself, but the belief in the cause that those people have did. Yeah, absolutely.
15 of the 19 hijackers came from Saudi Arabia. Bush is out at his ranch holding hands with the royal princes. But then we've got to go into Iraq. No, I mean, seriously, sir, it's a serious issue.
I know where you're going.
Where do you think we're coming from, though, sir? I mean, tell me.
Well, you're trying to connect this, we're in bed with Saudi Arabia BS, and this is all a big farce to get Saudi oil and all that. That's not what it's about.
So our government isn't in bed with Saudi. Okay. While in Crawford, we ran into Ray McGovern and spoke with him about Iraq. Ray McGovern is a retired, senior-level CIA analyst whose career spanned the administrations of John F. Kennedy to George H.W. Bush. His duties included chairing national intelligence estimates and preparing the president's daily brief.
I believe that they are still interested in permanent military bases there. I believe they are still interested in controlling the oil from that part of the world. And so it will be stay the course. It will be 6, 7, 8 U.S. troops killed every day or every week. And what's below the surface here was revealed to me by a very well-heeled gentleman who came up to me after a speech I made outside of Milwaukee in a very affluent suburb. He said, Mr. McGovern, get real. I mean, what's your problem? He said, you don't have any problem with, you don't deny that we need the oil, do you? And I said, no. He said, well, 6, 7, 8, 10 Marines a week for the oil. You have to admit that's a very, very cheap price for the oil. I said to him, how do I handle this? I said, well, the utilitarian argument is probably the best. I object to it, said I, because we can't do it. There are 1.3 billion Muslims in this world. They're not going to let us do it.
It's already widening.
The borders are porous. We can't do it. Well, that didn't convince him. He said, well, I think we can do it. I said, oh, well, suppose your son was one of those 6 killed in Iraq last week. And you know what? He looked at me like it had never occurred to him. And it wouldn't have occurred to him because it wouldn't be his son, It would be the sons from the farms. It would be the sons from the cities. And so he said, well, I don't buy that either. So I'm going, well, maybe I'll try a moral argument on it. I said, well, are you one of those that likes to have the 10 Commandments brought into the schoolhouses and the courtrooms of this? He said, oh, that's a great idea. I said, well, if memory serves, there's one that says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's oil. I mean goods.
Don't bear false witness.
There's one, don't forever what. There's one that says you shouldn't steal. And there's also one against killing, if I remember correctly. So maybe you want to subtract 4 and bring in the 6 commandments into the schoolhouses and the courtrooms of this world. Get real. I said, this is a moral issue. We shouldn't be going around killing unarmed civilians and causing more violence where violence is endemic.
Okay, what did he say, sir?
He turned on his heel, marched out to his SUV, prayed for cheap gasoline, and drove home.
I want the oil. Let's educate them, bring them in democracy, and take their oil.
Apparently somebody took too much yellow acid and got the story wrong.
The majority of the construction, and the vast majority, like I'd say 90% of the construction that I saw wasn't with the Iraqis, it was with the American bases that they were building. Concrete structures, incredibly permanent, designed to house thousands of soldiers for a long period of time.